All right, so this is the next recording. I don't know where it's going to be placed inside the release dates, but as far as timeline, this is the third full episode that we have recorded. So I've got John Watson with me. John is a guy I've gotten to know briefly and even more so recently through the asphalt industry. And John, I'm really excited that you're here for one thing. And as we were talking about what we're going to talk about on this, we've kind of got bounced all over at a couple different ideas, but John's got a very interesting involvement in his life because he's kind of all over the board. He's got many different aspects to where he works in the blue collar industry. He works in a white collar industry. He's a big family man, and he's fairly young in age. So the personal development that John has gone through just in his natural life cycle is pretty impressive. So John, how old are you for one thing?
Yeah, Kyle, I am 26.
Awesome. 26 years old. A couple of things so talk briefly about your involvement in your security job, because that's something like you're the only person I know of that does that. What goes along with your job?
So with my job, I ultimately worked my way to my current position, but we manage many different networks, and we essentially, long story short, we try to keep the bad guys out from the inside of people's networks. And by networks, I mean small businesses have computers, and we ultimately don't want them to get ransomware. We don't want bad guys confiscating their emails or kind of what you think would be a cyber attack. That's what we try to prevent.
Okay. So, I mean, you've described it to me as cybersecurity. Is it specialized in one? So, because the first thing that pops into my mind when I hear cybersecurity is internet predators. Do you deal anything with that, or is it mainly identity stuff?
So with predators, the first thing that comes to mind is you're thinking about the black hat hacker that's trying to go into someone's network and either provide ransomware or send a virus onto their network to affect their computers and potentially take down their business. That's what we try to prevent from happening.
Okay. What type of, I mean, how do you catch many people? Is it something that's fairly active to where there's much more of a danger out there than people are aware of?
So we don't necessarily catch actors right in their footsteps. At times we do. We've had a couple instances where there was ransomware, and we had to actively go in there and see what they were locking down and initiate incident response plans and work our way backwards. However, normally we take the proactive step and we look for vulnerabilities, and we try to eradicate those vulnerabilities before they get used by the bad guy.
Sure. You've got a job with Amazon as well that you work inside the warehouse. It's kind of like a side hustle. And then you also in the summer work and you've got a partner in this doing asphalt maintenance, seal coating and things like that. What I'm curious of is the mindset shift because those are like completely opposite sides of the spectrum as far as brain functions go and mentality and operations and everything. And like, how do you switch tasks? I mean, is that something that it makes a big effort, or you just kind of, this is what I do, so it doesn't really take much thought?
Honestly, now because I've done it for so long. I've done it for years now.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much thought. I really enjoy the asphalt industry. I really enjoy the blue collar work. You know, Amazon is kind of a workout to me in a
Yeah.
sense. That's how I think about it, and I just go into work and think of it as a workout. And it's kind of interesting because when you look at Amazon warehouse, you know, they want to be as efficient as possible because they have so many packages they need to
Yeah.
get to people.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of my colleagues at the warehouse, they Amazon is all about statistics and how people perform, and those performances are tracked. And my colleagues at Amazon normally, for example, do 8 packages per hour,
Mhm.
and that's okay. That's acceptable for them, but that's not acceptable to me.
Right.
So I try to beat my scores every single time I go in, and I'm averaging 35 packages per hour. So I'm doing 3 times the amount of work as they are,
Holy smokes.
just because I see it as a workout and I enjoy it. Um,
Really?
Now, switching back to cybersecurity,
Right.
it's all a brain game. You know, I'm not doing a lot of. I'm sitting in a chair for 8 to 10 hours a day. I'm not really doing anything physical, but
Mhm.
mentally, you know, I'm looking for vulnerabilities. I'm saying,
Would you
hey, how
say
can
that,
we?
would you say that it's still because you know the Amazon gig is very production based.
Correct.
So, and it sounds like the cybersecurity is not very production based.
It's production, but it's not a physical production.
Right.
Like there's tickets that come in and we have to resolve those tickets. So it's production, but it's not like a physical production.
Yeah, I got
It's
you.
kind of challenging to explain, but
I honestly, I really don't want to go down that road because we're gonna, if you tried to explain it to me, you would be speaking an entirely different language. I'm curious, what excites me is that A, you do it, B, like the surface base, I guess the surface operations that happen, like, you know, I didn't know that there was things like, let's put it this way, a threat comes up, I'm guessing it gets portrayed as a ticket, and then you're going to dive into it.
correct. Yeah. We have a lot of application based detections, and
Mhm.
we have a lot of things and put in place that provides alerts to us. And
Yeah,
if those alerts are triggered, that's when we go after it.
sure. So
It's
you've
kind of
got,
like
go ahead.
it's kind of like a cop in an instance. Like if someone speeds past them speeding, and they, you know, they detect that and they go after them.
Gotcha. So you're switching many different things throughout the day, or I guess not day, but just throughout your life between asphalt maintenance, doing stuff with Amazon, and then the cybersecurity. So you're switching a lot of different functions very often. Plus, we were talking about earlier, your home life, you've got, it's you, your wife, and your wife's 3 sisters that are really under your wing. And so you're growing a community of people as well. How organized do you have to be? Because that's a lot of balance. You know what I mean? That's a lot of balance. That's a lot of organization. And to be honest with you, like, I don't know that I could do it. Like, I, I just, that requires a lot of patience for one thing. I'm patient to a limit, you know, and I've got this feeling about you that you probably have a lot more patience than I just naturally do.
Yeah, patience is definitely a key to everything that I do. You know, I try to be as patient as possible, and guess what? I'm a human. I lose my patience too. And but yeah, providing for my family, and long story short, uh my wife's mom passed away, and so we took her 3 sisters under our belt at the age of 18, and we provided for them. And nothing goes there's no experience that will make you grow up as fast as that, I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Providing to three teenagers, and trying to guide them in the
Yeah.
correct direction that you want them to go. And you're still guiding yourself at that point. You don't know what you're doing. Like,
Because you're not all that much older than they are.
correct.
So
From the
you,
oldest one, I'm only 3 years older than her.
but still, you have somebody looking up to you as far as direction and accountability and what do I do with myself and my emotions, and how do I process life in general at this point in time? Is that something that you took on that responsibility out of necessity, or like, were you even willing to do that, or was that just something that was kind of dropped in your lap that you absorbed and then figured it out as you went?
Honestly, it was kind of like fight or flight.
Okay.
I always have this mentality of like, hey, I love my wife a lot, and I'm not gonna just let her do it alone. I'm not gonna just be like, here, I'm out of the relationship. Sorry, I'm not gonna help you. I'm not that kind of guy. And people say maybe I'm too nice. I'm not sure, but I was stuck through it, and it's been rewarding, you know.
But it sounds like you didn't really give yourself a choice to second guess it. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of relates back to my business. I didn't really give myself a choice. My business partner was like, hey, do you like this idea? And I said, yep. And we're not turning back. Sorry.
Right.
So that's where Freedom Seal Coat came.
Did you know anything about asphalt before you got into it?
I knew nothing about asphalt besides that my driveway was made out of asphalt. That's literally all I knew.
And in the same respect, you also knew nothing about what to do with three teenage girls when you were not much, pretty much still a teenager yourself.
Yeah, that's correct. I didn't realize how much time they spend in the bathroom doing makeup. You know, I'm in and out. I take a shower. I'm in and out in 5 minutes, and they're still in there 2 hours later. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing?
What some of the mindset development that you've had to go through in order to be good at what you do? Because there's obviously a learning curve, because you approach things not knowing what to do with the attitude of, I don't know what to do.
It all comes down to, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know. I tell so many people that, and that might be confusing, but it makes sense in my head. It's, if I don't know something, I'm gonna figure it out. And
Yeah.
That's honestly what I've done my entire life. Google's my best friend, and I try to instill that into all four girls.
Sure.
And when they don't know something, they come and ask me, and if sometimes I fool with them and say, hey, I don't know, but in reality I know, because I just want them to have the power, figure it out on themselves. And it comes to problem solving. It's a big life issue, and problem solving is a thing that I feel like America's lacking nowadays.
Oh,
And so if I can, help others problem solve or learn that skill, I feel like that's going to help everyone in the long run.
Well, and that comes with, you have to be one step ahead as well. If you're going to pass on information to somebody else, or even growing a business like asphalt maintenance, you have to learn first in order to transfer that information to somebody else. And you have to learn the fastest.
Yep.
You have to learn the fastest, and you have to learn the most. And I think what happens with that is you end up developing a skill set within yourself that's just a natural mode of operation, to where you're always looking for areas and opportunities of growth. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably more attracted to people that you see that trait in themselves. They're a high performing person. They do a lot, or they're very proficient in this area that I'm looking to be in. You know, I want to get better at this skill set, so I'm going to shadow that person. You know, do you have any major influencers in your life to where, you know, you've learned some very skillful traits or sets or mindsets or whatever it might be that you've looked up to yourself?
Yeah, I have lots of influencers. Even you, Kyle. I was watching you before you even met me, but um, there's so many people out there that I watch and I follow, and
Yeah.
it's hard to specify names, because I could say like Elon Musk. Like there's
Yeah.
some things that I take from him, and just kind of mashing it together into my own version of life. That's kind of what I do. Is I watch all these people, I take things from them and turn it into my own.
Yeah. So not to stop on the topic of me, but because I'm curious, what was things about me to, like, when you say that you were watching me before you even met me, like, because the reason I'm curious about this is because I don't know what I do sometimes that anybody would want to follow. Like, you know, I'm just doing what what interests me and what I'm excited about, and I'm willing to put it out there because I got to believe that, you know, somebody else might be. But like, I don't view myself as like, here, come look at me, you know. And so, because I'm still building something. I mean, I'm just finished our third season in this business myself, and I'm still very much figuring it out. You know, this is, even with this podcast, like, it's getting a lot of good initial response. And I think that, you know, people are eager about what's going on. There's a lot of interest around it, but I mean, the fact that there's somebody that I am or was influencing when I don't know that that's happening, for one thing, it gives me a lot more reason to just be up on my game. You know what I mean? Like, because if you forget for a minute that there's people that you are influencing, they're watching when you struggle too, and they're watching when, you know, when you make wins. And so I think that, just as a almost like a reoccurring theme in the back of your mind, and I'm sure that you can apply this to your same situation too, is that when you realize the influence that you have on people without knowing it, and tell yourself that there are people out there watching me and what I do and the steps I make and how I respond, you just begin to tackle your life differently, because you know that it's not just you. You know what I mean? Like, people are
Yep.
looking, people are watching, because ultimately everybody's confused in their own way. You know, everybody's confused
Very
in
true.
their own way. And so the way that I respond is going to, in some ways, dictate the way that you respond in your situation, as in how to apply, if that makes sense. Well, Kyle responded to this situation in this manner. It just naturally transfers over. I'm going to respond in a similar way, unless it triggers like, all right, well, that was obviously not the right way to respond, but it's the influence that rubs off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And I have a really good example of this, and you or people listening to this may find this creepy, but it is what it is. So owning a business and not owning a business before, or owning a new business and a completely different topic that you've never experienced before, you ultimately know nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna give the example of Kyle, for example. So I do everything. I market, I create the website, I kind of do everything. Well, I don't know how to market. I don't know how to like create ads. I don't know how to do these things. Well, I can watch Kyle with Integrity Asphalt and say, oh, this is how he's marketing. This is how he's creating these ads. And honestly, that's why I follow everyone in the industry, because everyone has their own spin to something.
Yeah.
And you may not think you're influencing me, but you are. Because if I see an ad on your Facebook page and I don't like it, but it gets tons of reactions, then of course I'm gonna, even though I don't like it, I'm gonna create something similar because I
Yeah.
want that same reaction.
Yeah.
I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah. So you're looking more so the results determine the action at that point in time. You know, like if this action produces good results, then this is what I need to do also, because, you know, I know for me, I won't speak for you on this, but I'll speak for me, is I have to get outside my own head sometimes and with the thought of, I feel like it should work this way because I feel like it should be like that. I just want to be right, you know? But I have to sometimes stop and ask myself, well, what do you want to be? Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? You know? And so if we approach things with a neutral mind of, I would rather be effective than right, which means, you know, putting a lot of our pride aside, and we're going to make more headway in a shorter period of time. That transferred over into the situation like with you at home, is you're directly influencing somebody's emotional response and their development. You know what I mean? Like that's much more important than how you convince somebody to let you seal coat their driveway.
And you know what's really funny about that is that when you live with 4 girls, you're always wrong. So no matter how much I want to be right, I have to humble myself, and I know I'm right, but I'm wrong. So that's how I've kind of came up with that whole mindset of, hey, I'm not always right, but I,
Do you,
it's okay.
you do a lot of the sales in your
I
company?
do. Yep.
Have you learned that skill set with clients when clients feel like they like, I mean, because this happens all the time, is oh, I got dogs barking in the background. Everything that moves is something that's worth barking at, in case nobody has dogs. In case nobody knows that.
I have 2 golden Newfies and they do the same.
Oh, there you go. Now I kind of lost my train of thought, but oh, when you're talking to clients and
They
like
think they know everything.
well, they've done the research, they feel like they know what needs to be done, and you are here to do this for them because they are the professional at this point in time, you know, and so they're always right, and whether you're right or not wrong, you're still wrong. You know, and how do you approach things like that, as far as what are some of this, like when you say that you're always wrong, I'm assuming
So
that comes into play a lot with your sales.
yeah, that comes with sales and business as well. But um, uh, I have a trigger. So with sales,
Mhm.
a client can be right, or they can think they're right, and I know that they're wrong,
Mhm.
and that makes me right. But um, with them being wrong, I have a perfect example of this this lady. She wanted her driveway seal coated. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, we shouldn't do this. It's gonna rain this afternoon. We shouldn't
Mhm.
do this. Like
Mhm.
it's gonna rain in the next hour, so it's gonna just wash away,
Yep.
and we'll be back, and we'll have to do it again. And she
Right.
said, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not gonna rain. Just do it anyways. And I said, okay, I'll do it anyways. So I go to their house, and mind you, it's just me.
Yeah.
I go out and I seal coat her driveway. It's really small. It's probably like 20 by 20.
Yeah.
It's not big.
Yeah.
And so guess what? It rains half an hour after I leave. And she calls me, John, this looks terrible. It's all over the garage doors. Um, what can I do? And she calls me not the day of, she calls me like 2 days later.
Yeah.
So the seal coat dries on the garage door. The seal
Yeah.
coat is on the cement, everything.
Mhm.
And I simply had this conversation. I was like, hey, do you remember me telling you, hey, we shouldn't do this day? She said, yeah. And I was like, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. And I can help you get like clean up the mess and I'll reseal it for you.
Mhm.
But ultimately, like in the future, we can't do this anymore.
Right.
And I'm she's really thankful that I went to the house and I helped her clean up. And it probably took me 5 hours out of my time to go help clean up. And I
Yeah.
didn't charge her any of it.
Yeah.
But it was a life lesson for her. Is she thought she was right, and she thought that, and the contractor was right, and that's okay. But in the future, she should let the person who is in the industry make that decision.
What did you learn out of that situation?
I learned that follow your gut feeling. If you think it's gonna rain, just follow your gut feeling. If it's gonna
Yeah.
rain, it's gonna rain. Just cancel the job and don't try to appease the customer and let them be right.
Because ultimately what you're doing is you're looking out for their best interest at that point in time. Yeah, because you know what's coming up. You know the damage it's going to cause. You know how much extra work it's going to be. Just because they can't see that at that point in time doesn't mean that you're not still protecting their best investment. There might be a slight disagreement, but ultimately, you're the one whose name is on the job at the end of it. Have you approached that again with like another client to where you've then had to say, all right, we have to reschedule this because this is not a good idea?
Yeah, so that happened at the beginning of this year, and uh, that was a learning curve. I was like, I don't want to spend 5 hours
Right.
cleaning seal coat off of a garage door. That is not fun.
Right.
It takes a lot of Dawn dish soap to get that off.
Oh yeah.
But another scenario came up where we were doing an asphalt apron,
Yeah.
and we were like, hey, this doesn't look right. Like, we should fix this
Sure.
part of it. And they were like, no, I don't want you to do that. It's going to cost extra. And I was like, well, it's not going to cost much extra if we do it now, because we already have it tore up.
Yeah.
And we just got to throw some more class 5 down and call it a day.
Right.
And looking out for your customers is most important, because they're always going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've found, or one thing that's been really reinforced the last few years, is every time someone puts on Facebook and the Farmington Facebook group, and they're like, hey, who do you suggest to seal coat or asphalt maintenance?
Right.
I see like 10 people say John Watson. And it's so humbling. It's so awesome to just see my name out there, and people trust me. That's the whole thing, is trust.
Right.
Building that trust with your clientele is a
Oh,
key.
you can't. There's a line that is very far out there on the lengths that you should go and the extent that you should work to in order to build trust, for one, back up your name for two, and ensure the client satisfaction for three. There's a difference, and this comes in friendships even. There's a difference between somebody trying to take advantage of you versus you holding up your end of the deal and giving up that little bit more. Because if you ultimately provide more value than the dollar would warrant, which can sometimes be the difference of, it doesn't always mean that you're out there doing more physical labor, you put more material down, or it doesn't always mean that. Your value comes in the form of, you communicated well, you're nice, you explained things well, you showed up on time, you did what you said you were going to do, you asked them, hey, are you happy with the job that we did here? And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do, because you're asking somebody to criticize your work. You're giving them the opportunity for a face-to-face. Here's a face-to-face comment card. What do you think?
You know, this year is that's one thing that we did change is making sure people provide reviews or
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback, I tell you what, I love feedback. It allows me to grow personally, but also in the business. And
Yeah.
the people that aren't good at taking feedback, I suggest them to reconsider that.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
feedback can be your worst enemy, but it could also help you grow personally.
well, you would have to knock down your pride in order to willingly take feedback. You know what I
True.
mean? Because if if you did something on a job to where you shortchanged something, or you cut a corner here or there, or it's not the picture perfect one that the best one that you've turned out, which it happens. It just sometimes that's part of it. You're the contractor, so you should be the biggest critic of your own work. But when you open up the stage for a client to now take shots at you willingly, you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable, for one thing. You're opening yourself up for criticism, and so you have to be willing to get something that you're not ready to hear or that you don't want to hear. And there's a lot of clients out there that, or excuse me, a lot of contractors out there, and even people in general, like, this is the way it was, this is the way it is, this is the work we did, this was our interaction, we're done here. You know what I mean? Like, I've done my part, you've done your part, we're done. Very few people allow themselves to come back and say, were you happy with the way that this turned out? Do I need to do anything more in order to ensure your satisfaction? Because that would mean that you're losing profits on the bottom line, because you're not moving on to the next job. You're still here, stuck with this one.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
go ahead.
We had our biggest contract job in September. That kind of, it was a big learning curve, but then also it was like we stuck through it. It took 3 weeks. It doesn't matter.
How
At least,
long did you anticipate it took when you bid the job?
So when I bid the job, I said, we will have this done in 4 days. So
it
the
does
problem,
go like that sometimes, so doesn't it?
That's right. But the problem is that it was Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
So manufacturers or our distributors were closed. So if I needed asphalt because we were doing some patching work, I needed seal coat because we ran out of seal coat.
Right.
And everyone was closed that Monday, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then the client was like, nope, you can't do any work on the weekdays. And so it, in the end, it took 3 weeks because we couldn't do work week. We couldn't do any work on the week.
Yeah.
Besides weekends.
Yeah.
And then at the end they were like, well, why didn't you do it faster? And I was like, well, we communicated with you and we told you that, hey, not being able to do it on the week or during the week, it would take a little bit longer because we only have the weekends to work on. And then, you have rain days and weather doesn't always pan out. So it's interesting to say the least.
I will say that you do, as a contractor, you have every right to say what you are willing and are not willing to do. And because, and that comes with time in the game. And where I realize that I have every ground to do that is when your schedule is busy enough, you can't let somebody else dictate your schedule, because let's say you're booked out for 2 months. You've bid the job for 4 days. Let's say in a perfect world, you bid the job for 4 days. Hopefully you can get it done in 3, but you've allotted 6 because for any sort of errors, in one way or the other, you've got people backed up. You have every right to say to the client, look, this is what we're able to do. This is the schedule we have. And they say, well, you can't work on the weekdays. Well, I'm sorry, we have to. We're going to have to figure out a way to work
that
around
work.
this? You know, what will be the easiest? How can we come to terms with this? Because you can't always get certain products that you need on the weekends. You can't always, the availability to you to do your job properly, it just doesn't happen. Plus, there's a reason that they want you to come in at their most convenient time, which makes it the most inconvenient for you. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And so you have every right to say, well, this is what I can do. If they're not willing to do that, most likely they're going to find somebody else. They've got a couple options. They can find somebody else that is willing to do it. And then they're the ones complaining about, well, you know, we lost 2 weeks of other production because we folded to them, or they're going to have to deal with everybody else who's also busy and say, well, sorry, that doesn't work for us. You know what I mean? That's just something that comes with time. That's something that comes with demand, especially. And it's okay. It is, you are able to explain that and communicate that in a way that's not offensive to the client. You know what I mean? Because you are ultimately there for their, but you're trying to improve their surroundings. You're not trying to make it worse. You know, it's, asphalt is one of the most inconvenient things I feel like we can, you know, that you can do for people, because you're making a big mess right in the middle of all the commotion. And it's generally in a business, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's in a business. So, and they're spending a lot of money.
Normally, yep.
So there's not many things that are going well in your direction when it comes to that, but we can work as hard as we can to make that experience as painless as possible for the client.
Yep. Unless one of their customers decides to drive in the parking lot when you're doing your work.
Well, you know,
That's
that
always fun.
happens. That happens. So, John, what do you think, or what do you feel is one of the biggest challenges you face as far as along the lines of with your balance between multiple jobs, one being seasonal, and, you know, basically raising a family?
The biggest challenge is time management and communication. Now I said earlier that I manage my time wisely, and
Yeah,
I do, but it takes a lot of work to figure out your schedule.
yeah,
You know, I have to look at 3 girls' schedules plus my wife's plus mine and
yeah,
figure out what time is most convenient for me to go to the gym or go take a walk or,
yeah,
you know, work on business stuff, because ultimately I don't want to be disturbed when I'm, you know, creating my website, or
yeah,
I just want focused time, I guess is a better way to put it. And so
yeah,
I really have to carve out my schedule around theirs, to make everything work. And then communication, like when I work at Amazon, I really need to communicate with Cassie, my wife, and her 3 sisters and say, hey, does anyone need a ride during this time? Because if not, I'm going to go work here or do this. Um, and of course, now all of them can drive now, but before, when they didn't have their license, you know, that was a hard learning curve. Is, well, now I have to spend 2 hours driving them somewhere, and that's 2 hours that I could be doing something productive, or what I deem as productive.
yeah. Are you a patient by nature, or is that a skill you've acquired over time?
That's a hard question to answer. I would say I'm patient by nature, but I definitely think that I've gained more patience over time. I don't think I've had the amount of patience that I have now, um, previously. And I think that comes from just my whole life scenario, but then also working in IT. Um, when you work with users that don't understand their technology, and you have to explain to them 5 times what they're doing wrong, and they still continue to do such.
I wouldn't be able to
um,
do it. I could not do it.
yeah, it just builds up, and yeah.
What do you do for like a stress reliever for yourself? When you say, because you mentioned going to the gym or taking a walk, or I mean, is that obviously there's a certain level of importance for that for you if you time block for that, or fit that into your schedule?
Stress reliever. It's really challenging. I find my business or Amazon being a stress reliever, because I enjoy doing those things.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, "Hey, what do you have as a hobby? What do you do for fun?"
Yeah.
And I say, "Work on my business because I enjoy it."
Right.
But I also enjoy cybersecurity. I love cybersecurity, and that's why I'm still with the company that I'm with, and I haven't jumped into the business full time yet. Just
Do you see
because
yourself jumping full time into it at some
as
point?
at some point I would like to, unless I don't need to. Like if I can still manage the company on the top end, and have others acquire the skills that I have currently,
Yeah.
um, I don't see myself jumping in full time, but I'm not sure at this point.
So what if because if that's a perfect world scenario for you, what's stopping you from just structuring it that way?
Finding people that are like myself. It's the hardest thing to do.
You will never do it.
Yeah, to
It's
be honest with you.
impossible. Well, and here's my opinion on that, is that you don't want to find people that are like you, because they're going to have your same weaknesses as strengths. You know what I
You're
mean?
not wrong.
You need to find people that are different than you, so their strengths are your weaknesses.
I think you're right about that.
Because in a business, it's you, and even in it's not always in a business. It's in a relationship. It's whatever. I'm going to be good in these areas. We can't both be bad in the same areas. It's beneficial for you to find somebody that's good in another area. I think that the narcissistic part of everybody naturally wants to find somebody that's similar to us, because you are the most familiar with yourself. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
You're the
Complete
most
sense.
familiar with yourself. And so you know what to predict in somebody else. But if you find a teammate, whether it's in business or life or whatever, that's good at something you're not, and you're the ringleader over all this, you're going to want to help them excel in those areas that they're good at. Let me do what I'm good at, so I can set you up to be successful in what you're good at. And then this whole thing will work much better than if we're both fighting for what we're both good at to make ourselves feel better. You know what I mean?
Yep, exactly. That makes sense.
But approaching it, if you want to do everything, you're gonna eventually come to a point. I feel like things grow to a point to where very rarely can you balance multiple things with very few people involved. You have to build out a team, and that's what I've realized with individuals that run multiple businesses or large businesses. It's not that somebody that does $10 million a year, they just figured out a way to be super productive in every single area.
Right.
You've only got so much time in a day. What they've done is they've done a good job at finding people to come in and then delegate and let them do what they're good at or what you've tasked them to do. So if you've already started the asphalt business as a side gig and it's kind of getting to the point to where it's going pretty good, you could see yourself moving full-time into it, or at least the option to do so, but you're not sold on it. Maybe move forward with the goal of, I don't want to be full-time in my business. I want to bring people on that are going to be full-time, and I'm going to involve myself in these areas where I'm most proficient at, that I can put in, 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, or you block your week out, however that looks like for you, that's for you to determine. But especially if you have a partner, you're the business owner, so you have say to do whatever you want. I feel like the gauge, and if you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, is the health of your employees. The health of your employees, the health of your company, which ultimately will result in your client satisfaction. If everybody's happy, then you're doing something right. You're going in the right direction. If all you're getting is red flags and kickback everywhere, then something's suffering.
Yep. Exactly. That's this last year. So we grew. I keep going back to this review thing, but we
Yeah.
grew our reviews. We still have 5 stars, and maybe I shouldn't say that because someone might go and give me a 1 star, and I might take that down. But
Yeah, well, you can cybersecurity that right out of there.
But something goes to say of having happy employees and a happy business owner,
Yeah.
and happy customers, that I just want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And involving more people. I think, to be honest with you, that might be the route that I take, is involving more people, because I love seeing other people succeed. If I can help you succeed, that
Yep.
makes me happy. Even if I, have to work 24/7, and what, sometimes I do. And I think that would, in the end all be all goal, I think that might be the route that I take, is just allowing other people to be happy and
Sure.
providing success to them, or helping them get to their own version of success. And I always go back to this saying that I always say is, make your dreams a reality.
Yeah.
And my dream is to have a farm, a business, and do cybersecurity. And I'm almost there. But
you're almost there. You've got a lot on your plate though.
That's right.
So
it keeps growing too.
Well, I think you'll be able to get everything you want. I have no doubt about that. And you'll figure out the longer you go, if there's kickback in one area, it's just like we brought up earlier, it's a matter of problem solving at that point in time.
That's right.
And I think when the time comes, you'll realize, all right, it's time to sacrifice in this area for the benefit of another. If you want other people to grow first over your, more than yourself, there's a certain point in time to where you have to, a person that is willing to grow and has the capability and the drive to grow quick, and especially quickly, sometimes you have to get out of your own way in order to get out of their way to let them grow. If you are absorbing all of the hats in your business because you feel like you have to be, and there's somebody inside your business that really wants those, it comes down to communication, knowing the people that you're around, knowing the people that work for you, knowing the people that you live with. What do you want? What do you want out of this? Where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to be? And then you gauge for yourself, am I getting in this person's way or not? Does that mean that I have to sacrifice something that I find, let's say it's sales. Generally, there's a lot of reward with sales because you go talk to a client, you land a job, there's a reward for that. You did something right. Let's say there's somebody else inside your company that's really good at sales. You have to then get out of your own way and sacrifice something that's rewarding for you in order so they can, and then you train them on how to be good at it. So then they can succeed, and then your business grows.
That's right.
Well, is there anything else that's on your mind pressing that you want to talk about? We've talked about a lot of stuff.
There's, my mind is always running, but there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's something specific poking right out right this second, but
awesome.
I think
go ahead.
Overall, we've discussed a lot, and I think hopefully whoever's listening is able to let us influence them
Yep.
in a positive manner to help them succeed in whatever they inspire to do.
Well, here's my thought with this whole podcast is that, and you know this, but sometimes it needs to be said, is that there are more people out there than just you that are dealing with what you're dealing with. You
Yep.
just might be the first person that's willing to be vulnerable about it. And I think that there's a lot of value in the footwork, the hands-on, the very specific details. And that's going to be a theme throughout this whole podcast, is that if there's somebody that picks up 1 ounce of value or information based on, we might not even realize what we said or what we talked about. But if they can relate it to something in their life, because it came through from 2 people that are just normal people. It doesn't matter how much money we make. It doesn't matter how involved we are. It doesn't matter how big our businesses are. The truth is that we all have a certain amount of challenges that we face every single day. And so what brings out somebody as coming across as genuine is them willing to be vulnerable about their situation and not look at it as, well, that's not worth talking about. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like this one was definitely a lot more interview based, and I'm perfectly okay with that, because it gives me an opportunity to get to know you better. We didn't necessarily talk about specific. We talked about what you do. We talked about a lot of challenges within that. We talked about those challenges that transfer throughout life that anybody else is going to be able to relate to their specific life
Situation.
Yeah, situation. Yep. So, and I think that's where the value comes in. So I'm super glad that we did this. What is the name of your business again?
So my business name is Freedom Seal Coat.
Where are you out of? Where you
We are
at?
based out of Minnesota.
Say the state one more time.
Minnesota.
There we go. What town in Minnesota?
So we service pretty much 50 miles radius of Minneapolis, St. Paul, but we are located in Farmington, Minnesota, which is about 30 minutes south of St. Paul, Minneapolis.
You do residential and commercial, yes?
Yep, residential, commercial, and we're growing, and there's not a job that's too big or too small. We do them all.
That's great. That's really great to hear. So, well, I'm going to cut it here.
Sweet.
John, thank you very much for being willing to do this. I'm honestly super happy to get to know you more. And so, I mean, because we're connected with a bunch of different people on social media. And so just interactions like this, I now have a lot more knowledge about what's behind the face of John Watson when I see you pop up online.
That's right.
And that's extremely valuable to me. And I'm sure that, are you going to go to NPE this year?
Actually, I have a vacation that's that I'm going to. I have a house in Mexico, and
Yeah.
so my wife's birthday is during NPE, and she requested that we go to Mexico for it, and it's something that I bit my tongue on, and I was like, fine, well, do what you want to do because it's your birthday. But I wanted to go to NPE to meet everyone, Ryan
Yeah.
Austin, everyone that goes, but yeah, not gonna happen this year, I guess.
That's okay. There will be more times, and your investment into your family is more important.
Exactly.
NPE, for those that don't know, it's called National Pavement Expo. Since me and John are both involved in the asphalt industry, that's something, it's a trade show that goes on once a year, and it's because we're connected with a bunch of people from all over the US and even in Canada. And so opportunities to where you get to meet these people in person and in face and just shake their hand, and like that's, you communicate with people throughout the course of a year, especially in a similar industry, and you only know somebody based on their profile picture or their comments online, or very rarely do you even get on a Zoom call with somebody unless it's in a big group. So these trade shows are really an opportunity for for all of these newfound friends to connect on a different level and encourage each other. So for those that don't know, that's what MPE is. But
Great description.
thanks, John. Thank you very much again. I am super excited that you've been on this episode of the 7-Day Hustle, and that we now know a lot more about your 7-Day Hustle.
Heck yeah. If anyone has any questions or wants to join my hustle, I guess I'd be happy to help them out in any way possible.
How do people find you online before I forget that completely?
So you can, there's a couple different ways if you want to follow the business. We have a TikTok, but if you just go to freedomsealcoat.com, you can find our business Facebook page, Instagram, and TikTok. Otherwise, if you just look me up on Facebook under John Watson, you'll find me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Bye.